All right, so I want to take a look at some ways that we could see modal mixture here in a pretty controlled environment, but rather than just looking at things independently, seeing it mixed in a little bit with some just sort of more normal chord progression. So we're going to look at just a 4-part chorale here, which definitely has modal mixture in it, and I want to see if we can sort of just talk through how we're going to see it involved, how it's going to look, and the ways that we can sort of implement the the various aspects of modal mixture, whether it's one accidental that's changed in a chord or two, all that kind of stuff. So we can see here we're going to be in the key of F major, which sounds kind of like this, right? Something like that. And here's one of the first things to sort of point out about modal mixture. When we look at this chorale, when we look at this 4-part music here, in the past, when our only chromaticisms have been functional, we've known that we can identify like the secondary dominant chords by just finding the accidentals, right? We knew that we could tell if we've modulated by looking at the cadence at the end and seeing if we're in a different key than we were at the beginning of the phrase. Here, though, we can't really tell as much about what's going on because we're adding in modal mixture, which is chromaticism for color, right? That's one of the main differences here. So we have to be a little bit more clear as we're evaluating these because we can't immediately know why it's there. We're going to talk about a couple little tricks to get a quicker idea of what's going on, but you have to at least investigate a little bit deeper. So anyway, like we said, we're in F major, and I think you can figure out that we're going to start on one chord. This is what this sounds like. We're going to call some of that artistic liberty. Anyway, so that's how this basically sounds. So we started on a 1 chord, and right out of the gate here on chord number 2, we can see that we've got a chromaticism. So let's try to figure it out. Now, first of all, we want to look, because remember, the way that we talk about modal mixture is that it's a chord that's borrowed from the parallel key. So if it's not a chord that we would see in this case in F minor, it's not a modal mixture type thing. It's not something that we would use there because we remember that the function stays the same. So if in F major we wouldn't see this chord, if we also wouldn't really see it in F minor, that means it probably is not modal mixture, and instead it's something that we're using for more of a functional purpose. So if we look here, this chord on beat 2, F in the soprano, A in the tenor, C in the alto, and E flat in the bass. Which of those notes gives away that this is not modal mixture? Well, it's the A natural, because of course A natural is the note that makes F major, right? If this was modal mixture, we would probably expect that to be an A flat, but it's not. So instead, we're sort of left thinking, okay, if this chord isn't here for color, like modal mixture would have it, it's probably here for a functional reason, which might make it like a secondary dominant type chord. And in fact, if you listen to it, it really does sound like a dominant chord, a dominant 7th chord, right? So if we stack it, F, A, C, E flat, that's root 3rd, 5th, 7th, right? So we know it's a dominant 7th chord. Where does it look to be leading? Which of those notes in there could be acting like a leading tone? It's the A in the tenor, which is moving upwards because A is the leading tone of B flat. So if this is heading towards B flat, we're going to probably call this a 5 of 4 chord, right? Because B flat is 4 and F is 5 of 4. And what inversion is this with the 7th in the bass? It's 5, 4, 2 of 4, right? And remember, one of the quick ways to sort of keep that in mind is if it's the tonic chord, if it's the 1 chord with the 7th in the bass, the flat 7 with solfege syllable te, in the bass, there's a really, really good chance that it's that 5-4-2 of 4 chord. So we sort of can see that that one is there for a functional reason, not for a color reason, right? It's functionally pushing us to 4. And then we get to our 4 chord on the next beat, right? Because we know that secondary dominant chords aren't liars. But in this case, it's a little bit of a trickster. It's not a liar. It goes to 4, but what's different about this 4 chord? Well, the note that should stand out is the one in the bass there, the D flat. Do we expect a D flat in F major? Absolutely not. But where might we, or where definitely do we expect a D flat? In F minor, because it's the 6th scale degree of F minor. It's solfege syllable lay, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, lay. And we said before that the 6th scale degree is the scale degree that is by far the most likely to be involved in modal mixture. And we can tell that this is modal mixture because 5-4-2 of 4 is a chord that's there for function. And its function is to get us to 4. And we do get to 4. But like we said, the quality or the color of the chord changes. So major 4 changed to minor 4. But the function is the same. Does that idea make sense? Do you see how functionally this chord is still doing the exact same thing that it would have done if it was a major 4 chord? It could have easily have been this. 1, 5-4-2 of 4, going to 4-6. Major 4-6, right? So the change we made is not for function, it's for color. And you can hear that dark, beautiful minor color in there, right? So that's a minor 4-6 chord. It's surprising, but it doesn't change the function. And by that I mean it doesn't change the function coming from the prior chord from 5-4-2 of 4, but it also doesn't change the function going forward, because where does a 4 chord want to go? It wants to go to 5, and what do we get? It goes right to 5, right? No problems there. One thing I do want to point out, just in terms of labeling, it doesn't matter if you write this as a major 4 or a minor 4 here in the 5-4-2 of 4. This chord doesn't know what's happening next. It's a chord. It's a label, right? So just label it as you would expect it, and then let this chord be the surprise. So we get to 5. Then on beat 2 of measure 2, we're still on a 5 chord, C, E, G, B flat in the bass. But instead of being root position, it's a 5-4-2. And that leads us to 1. Just sort of going quickly through the parts that don't involve any of the action. Then or 1-6, I should say. Then we get to a 4 chord. Now again, on the next chord, we should have an idea that something exciting's happening. So there's 2 notes in here that should be noteworthy. Which of these looks like it's got a functional purpose, and which of them looks otherwise? That was a contemplative pause there. I'm hoping that you can see that the B natural in the bass looks like it has very strong leading tone function or leading tone motion. And that should make us think that this is a secondary function chord. Where is it heading? It's heading to C. C is 5. And so we're thinking this is something of 5. Now, we can figure out what it is of 5. It's going to be either 5 of 5 or 7 of 5 by figuring out if B is the root, right? And so if B is the root, we should expect this to be a B, D, F, A chord, because we're in F major. But ooh, we kind of have that. We have B in the bass, we have F in the alto, we've got D in the tenor, and then in the soprano we've got A flat. So what does that mean? Well, it means this is a 7 of 5, but the difference is instead of being a half diminished 7 of 5 with A natural, it's a fully diminished 7 of 5, which is a product of modal mixture, right? That A flat is mixed from F minor, right? A natural, the 7th we expected there, is very common and expected in F major, but the A flat is from F minor. And so we feel with that fully diminished sound, it's pulling us to 5 more strongly. And because of that, the only thing we have to keep in mind is that we have to look for the resolution of those tritones. So we've got a pair there between the bass and the alto, and then the other tritones are between the tenor and the sopranos. And we remember when they're spelled like a fifth, as they are here, they resolve inwards, right? So that's sort of modal mixture and a secondary function chord all at once. It's this sort of cool marriage of these two ideas. Go to 5/7. This is great that I'm doing this remotely, virtually, because in person I always get a lot of questions about these 16th notes here, which many have suggested is just me making up for some pretty careless part writing. I would never make any comments about anything like that. Okay, so we're on 5/7 here. We escape through my inventive part writing, and then we land on this really great chord on the downbeat of measure 4 here. Again, look at the bass note. It's D flat. What scale degree is that in F? It's the 6th scale degree, and that should always send up red flags for us. When the 6th scale degree is altered, that's a really good indication that we might have some modal mixture going on. So here, what's the root of this chord? Well, it's actually D flat in the bass. D flat, F, A flat. And so when the root of the chord is altered, what do we do in terms of labeling? Well, we need to actually show that. So we call this a flat 6 chord, right? In F major, what's the 6th chord we would expect? It's D minor, right? D, F natural, or D natural, F natural, A natural, right? So in a normal thing, coming from the previous measure, right, we'd have this nice motion from 5/7 to 6, a minor 6 chord. But here, not only do we go to a major 6 chord, but it's flat 6 major. The root D flat has been lowered, so we need to call it flat 6. And what else do we notice? There's a second note that's been altered, right? A flat is also there. So this is one of those examples where 2 accidentals have been modally mixed. We got D flat and A flat. Why do you think we wouldn't have just kept A natural there? What kind of chord would that have been if it was spelled D flat, F natural, A natural? Well, it's augmented. It's an augmented triad, and that sort of goes away against the sort of clarity and purity of that flat 6 chord to all of a sudden just sort of surprisingly land on an augmented triad. Woo! I mean, that's the good stuff, right? So we want to make sure that it's not a new kind of thing, because remember, we're mixing from what we would have normally, or what we could have in the parallel key. We wouldn't have a D flat augmented triad in F minor, so we're not going to modally mix that, okay? And then this ends with just a really nice 2-6-5, 5-7-1 cadence. That's just an example of the ways we can see these modally mixed chords keeping their function despite having a different color, adding some drama to some secondary function chords, and borrowing multiple accidentals so that there's this real purity of the sound from the minor. So there you go. That's just a little bit of an example that we can see some of these in play. I hope you're finding them as wonderful a sound as I do. They're so rich, they're so affirming and wonderful. So we're going to keep exploring them.